Welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream we work on Django apps and we build out a Python web application, and I'm going to walk you through a project today on my homeschool application that I've been building throughout the course of this stream. The goal today is to add this new Django package. Well, it's new to me. It clearly, as you might be able to see here from this GitHub page, it's not necessarily a brand new application in the world, but it adds some automation capabilities for optimizing database queries. It's called django-auto-prefetch, and we're going to explore it and add it into my app and see how it goes. Check it out, poke around on the debug toolbar to see how it does actually optimizing things, and see if we can clean up some of the codes and remove some of the extra stuff that I added to try and optimize things, and just let this package handle it for us. So that's the plan this evening. If you would like to support me, if you like what you see later, you can do so. I'm on Patreon at patreon.com/mblehman, and I want to take a moment to thank my patrons of Rupert, Andrew, Dragos, Patrick, Eric, Philip, Miguel, and Shivan. I appreciate your support. It helps me stay motivated to work on this stuff, and I'm really grateful. All right, let's get into it. So if you want to ask me anything, you can. The goal of this is to teach people about Python and Django. So ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. That's what I'm here for. Happy to pause and work on questions that people might have. So also, I guess if people are interested in the project for this evening, I'll drop a link there in case you're coming in later and want to check out the repository yourself. So what is the problem? I guess maybe let's start there. Let's start with the problem that we're trying to solve, or that this package is trying to solve, and how it does it and what we can get into. Ashley 24, well, a bunch of numbers there. People do use JavaScript, you're right. So Python in web applications is often used on the server side of the application to actually power it. So there are a lot of common services that you're probably aware of, like YouTube or Instagram, that are powered by Python on their server side, on the actual servers that those companies own. Yes, for the back end. So it is possible, and this I work with Django, which is a web framework, and what it does is it will run the Python on the server and craft the HTML that needs to go to the browser and send that out. So it's called a server-side rendered web framework, versus you might be familiar, you mentioned JavaScript, you might be familiar with React or Vue or Angular or any of those that are more of a client side that do the HTML rendering and DOM manipulation over there. So it's a different model, and it's a model that's actually also used by Ruby on Rails. Maybe you've heard of that web framework, where all of the HTML, again, is crafted on the server and sent over to the user, to their browser. That's how it happens. And I don't know that we're going to get into the actual templates this evening, but that's the way this kind of works out. It's very, it's kind of a classic model of web development, to be honest. It wasn't until, well, the ability to do client-side JavaScript frameworks has been around now for a while. I've been doing software development for many years, but this was probably the predominant way until JavaScript became fast enough in the browser to actually handle client-side applications. So Django itself has been around for something in the range of 15 years or so, if I recall correctly, and so it's got a pretty rich history. All right, so let's talk about the problem, though, that we're trying to solve. When you're working with Django, you're working with an object relational mapper. And that means that it's trying to create Python objects and trying to create them from a database table. So it's fetching data from the database table. And I think there may be an example here of kind of a classic problem that you can encounter. Let's see if the author included it. Yeah, here we go. So here is an example of one of these problems manifested. In this scenario, the code that's happening is it's fetching from this choice model, and the object relational mapper is getting all of the choices that are available, and then it's printing that out. But you can see, observe the law of Demeter violation here, that it's going down multiple levels in order to actually print out some information. So it wants to print out the question text from a question. And the problem that happens in this scenario is that the query when Python triggers the iteration here on the for loop, it will do one query to a database that says, hey, give me all of the choice records for this choice model table. And that's fine. That's the expected behavior. The true problem, though, is when for each choice, this question right here is a different record. It's a different database table that is referenced. So when it is happening in a loop, at that moment where the question text is being queried, it has to do another database query. And this is classically called, the author here calls it 1 plus n, but I've most often seen it listed as the n+1 query bug. And 1 plus n is probably more accurate because it's the one query that starts the loop, and then one extra database query for each iteration through the loop. And that's the part that is expensive, because every time you go to the database in an application, there's network costs there, and it's just going to be the slow part of an app. So the way to solve this in Django is to hint to the framework that, hey, actually, I need you to get more information. I need you to get the question as well. So by doing this, what happens that in this scenario with this prefetch, it's telling Django and the object relational mapper, go ahead and fetch all of the relevant choice records, but also get the relevant questions that are related to those choices. And it does that in 2 queries. So instead of, let's imagine that choice had 100. Like, it's kind of a silly example maybe for that model, but if you had 100 choices, then if you're working in the n+1 problem scenario, then you're going to have 1 query to get all the choices, and then 100 queries to the question database table for every choice that you're iterating through. So that's 101 queries. So it's kind of linearly worse with the more rows that you have. Counter to that, in this second example here that actually does the prefetching, it does 1 query for the choices, but it's also going to preemptively get the other query for all of the questions, and it's going to do them in one thing. So that would ultimately be 2 queries. So you can see that there's a dramatic benefit from having the right prefetching there, but if you know to do it. And that's the key problem. Most people, when it comes to their first time with Django or whatever, they naturally would not know that you have to do these extra things. And who's to blame them? All right, so that's where django-auto-prefetch comes into the equation. And what it promises to do is change the system behavior so that when it gets to a for loop like this, you would be able to write the simpler looking code, which is this, and it's automatically going to give you the 2 query scenario instead of the 101, because it's able to detect, hey, this is a foreign key, so let me get all of the data preemptively on the first time that it's encountered, and kind of take advantage of that fact from there on. So it's a pretty clever little trick to work around this problem, and I think it's a solution that I would like to incorporate into my application, because it would be really nice if I could stop thinking about prefetching, and there's another one called select related that is also relevant. Because if we go over to my app, I actually did a quick search, and there's a few spots where I had to go back and do some optimization in my application to actually tell Django to do it. And I would like to avoid that, because it's not very much fun. And if you look at the rationale of the library, it basically points out that you don't really discover it until after the fact most of the time, when you're actually paying attention to that stuff. And how often do you pay attention to that? So this is really the problem scenario. So that's all the context for why we're doing this. So my plan this evening is to install this package, do the actual conversion. It's not terribly difficult as I was walking through it. It's really about switching out any time that we use a foreign key from using models.foreignKey to autoprefetch. Looks like I also might need to set the class, the actual model class, to come from autoprefetch as well. So I don't know how this is going to play with some of my other stuff that wants to subclass model too. It may not. We may have to experiment with that. But the process, I want to go through the process and see if it's actually going to optimize it and see if it brings the value that I desire. So that's the plan. So let's start. The first thing that we need to do is update the requirements to actually include, this new package. So this is Django auto-prefetch. So that would go here, auto-prefetch. And I don't know what the latest version is, so let's go to PyPI and look for it. So we need to find Django auto-prefetch. Hey Ryan, welcome. Looks like we're on 1.0. Very cool. So maybe that was Adam's way of saying that this library is stable from his point of view. Okay, so we've got Django auto-prefetch, and we need to generate the requirements file because I'm using piptools. Out of curiosity, am I in Japan? No, I am not. I am in Frederick, Maryland, so I'm on the East Coast of the United States. I have some friends in Japan, but I have never been. Maybe someday in my life I will get out there. Let's see. We've got, this is the change that it made. So we added this to our list of requirements. Ashley, I'm curious why you thought I might be in Japan. Now that you ask it. So maybe there's something about my environment. Oh, is it because of what's behind me? I have a Biobu style wall that I actually had. I'm currently in the basement of my home, and it's just a separator because all that you would see is like a not very pleasant wall. So I'm working on updating this environment to be a better studio, and so that's temporary until I make some modifications. Maybe that's what you noticed. All right, let's load or install this new package. So we've successfully installed the new package. And now I think we're ready to use it. Let's see, what else was there? We have to change the imports for these things and any managers and models and fields and query sets. Okay, so there's quite a few things that could be modified. Ryan, so here's, okay, good question. Let's talk about piptools for just a second because I glossed over it, thinking maybe I could like skip it this time, but I'm happy to explain it. Piptools separates dependencies into two groups. One is your like include file. That's this .in file. So these are the logical packages that your application actually uses. So if for instance Django auto-prefetch used some other package that I didn't really know or necessarily care about, that is not considered one of the packages. But what it does is the pip compile command that we just ran will generate the requirements text file. And the difference is, and you can kind of see it here in the way that it's indicated, is that the requirements text file is going to get the full tree of dependencies. So requirements include is the input. There's another way to maybe think about that in prefix. It comes from C++, the include and auto tools. Don't worry about that part. I like to think of it more as like maybe input, and the requirements txt is the output, and that output is then the full set of all of the dependencies. If you've done JavaScript development, it's like the package JSON file versus the package lock file, or Ruby, it's the gem file versus the gem file lock, and like this kind of 1-2 punch of here are the things that I care about, and here's the full list that allows Python to install all of the dependencies. Yeah, and you're right. It is really straightforward to implement this after the fact. So with the way that I would do this today, if I wasn't using piptools, is I would take my current requirements.txt, and there's a good chance that if I wasn't using it and I didn't really care about doing this properly right away, is that my requirements.txt is probably already the logical dependencies that my app needed, and I'm just depending on the fact that it's going to give me a reasonable installed version of everything when I actually go to do deployment. So you could actually probably take your requirements.txt and move it and do a requirements.in, and then use piptools to do the compile command. So piptools is the package, but the actual command that you use is pip compile. And I'll drop this command. Whoops. Come on now. There we go. Here's the actual command that I use. So it specifies what the output file is, and you specify your input file as the argument. So that will generate the full set of packages. Oh, you're fine. Like I'm happy to answer questions. Okay, and I guess finishing that thought off, just for the sake of completeness, you can see that the piptools pip compile generated output kind of tells you where it came from. Like Django is one of the things that I've said I needed to include, which is why it's listed as in via the -r requirements include file. So it is a core package, and you can see that right here on this line. But you can see that all of these other packages that I use also specify that they need a dependency. And so maybe it doesn't make as much sense for this one because I'm already including it myself. But let's look at another one that is what's considered a transitive dependency. So here's one. Here's a decent example. So I care about Django hash ID field, and that's what I want to install. But Django hash ID field needs this hash IDs package. I don't want to have to specify that myself and try and maintain that, because there's a possibility that Django hash ID field might change in the future what it requires. And then if it dropped that requirement for some reason, then I'd have this extra package that I need to track. So the compilation step is paying attention to everything that the packaging says it cares about, and then pins all of those versions. So you get something that, I think the right term is hermetic. You get something that everything is pinned and very reproducible. Oh yeah, I bet you know what you might have. One common recommendation that is out there is when people are told to generate their requirements.txt file, they're often told to do something like this: pip freeze, and then do requirements.txt. And that's an okay way to start. Again, what it does is it does capture the kind of behavior that piptools provides, and that you've kind of captured the snapshot. But the downside of doing the pip freeze route is that you don't have the distinction between what is the full set of dependencies, fancy term for that is a transitive closure, versus what is my logical set of dependencies. And so if you're wanting to go back through your requirements.txt file, at that point, if you've already done the pip freeze route, you kind of have to go through it manually and say, like, did I install this package myself because it's something that I imported in my app, or is it something that came from somewhere else? And you could iterate on that process and make sure you don't, delete stuff by accident. But that's one way you could go about it. All right, let me grab some water, and then we'll start working on some of these examples. Okay, so in my search results, I have one of these things that I needed was I have a school year object that is prefetching some breaks, and this is a detail view. And while we're doing this, let's bring up the debug output, the debug toolbar, and look at this page so that we can see the queries that are taking effect. And maybe we can see a before and after. In fact, that might be useful. So we can illustrate if this package is doing what we expect it to. So let's hide that for a moment. Go to the app, and we're camping out on the school year detail page, which is this page. Now we've got multiple breaks in here. So you can see all of these breaks that I've added for this school year. So part of that prefetch command was basically saying, like, not only get the school year that's relevant, but also go ahead and get the breaks and get any grade levels. And so it can do this effectively in 3 queries, right? And so, like, if we look at that, we should see in the SQL stuff, now there's 13 here, but there's more other stuff that's being fetched besides the school year stuff. But when you get to the school year, you can see here is the school year. Here's that one query for the breaks. Here's that other query for the grade levels. Cool. That's what we expect. Now, if let's change this for a moment. Let's guess of like how many queries are going to happen, just so you can get a feel for it, and then we'll actually see if our hunch is right. So we expect there will be, if we don't have that prefetching, there will be one query for every break. And so each one of these yellow blobs is a break. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, looks like 7 extra queries. And then there's also one for each grade level. So there's 3 different grade levels in this particular school year that I've built up. So 3 plus 7, that's 10. So our query count should go from 13 to not 23, because 2 of those in this one are prefetched, but it should go to 21 or something, right? So let's see if that theory pans out. So all I'm going to do is comment out these lines into a way that makes the Python code happy. So that should be sufficient. We'll refresh this page, and well, it's still doing 13. What's going on? Why was it able to do that? Maybe I have some other prefetching somewhere that I didn't think about. I don't think so. It's good to have like a base case to prove that it's working, and so I'm confused as to why it's saying that it does not need to get more. Because it definitely would need to get more. So where is the break query happening? School year. Get breaks for student. Maybe there's this other spot. There could be like multiple places where I'm inadvertently doing a prefetch. And again, this is like, if I can get rid of all of these layers, it's going to save me some code. So let me go check out this schools model area. School models. And that was line 105. My pattern of behavior, in case y'all have not joined the stream much, is I really do enjoy understanding what's actually happening. And this is a scenario where it's like, I don't understand why it's performing well. Like it shouldn't be, from my knowledge. There should be fetching of many breaks, and it doesn't seem to be the case. Maybe I need to restart the web server? Well, that's really curious. How are we going to make a convincing demonstration of this Django auto-prefetch if it's already doing the right thing? All right, let's see. We've got there's no more prefetch related calls in this entire views file. And there's definitely, oh, okay. I think I see why this is behaving nicely here. When I'm doing the iteration on breaks, and when I'm doing the iteration on grade levels, yeah, I'm glad you solved your problem. That was impressive, to about 4K down to 17 or something. That was cool. I see what's going on here, and the reason why this is still efficient, even if I have the prefetch. Look at how I'm doing this call. So in this for loop, rather than saying a for loop where I'm going through a bunch of school years and then I'm like in the example on the documentation where it had a for loop and then a for loop of objects and then another like a dot access there. What I'm doing here is actually I've already got my one object, and then I'm doing like a single query of all of the grade levels at once and iterating over those. And the breaks was something similar. That model method is I'm doing a single query of all the breaks and then doing a for loop on all of those, so that we're getting just the 3 queries. So this turns out to be a place that's a bad example of testing out prefetch, which that's good to know, which means we can pick somewhere else to start. Like I'm sure there are places where prefetch is actually being effective. What this does tell me is that this prefetch is absolutely useless in the way that I have it. I still am going to want to remove it as I integrate this package, and it'll just clean up this code and it'll just read nicer. I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of confusing. Like seeing this, it was a hint to me that needed to happen, and then we didn't behaviorally see it needing to happen. So it was, this code is effectively lying to myself, to me. And just look how much cleaner that is when the prefetch is gone. I think that's much nicer. I'm gonna delete that, and it should all be good to go. I'm glad I took a moment to understand it though. Let's see if we can find a different one. This is a course detail. Now this course detail is going to fetch resources and grade levels and any grades. So this one I feel like should have a fair amount more, a better chance of showing some bad behavior. So let's go into a course and take a look at it. This course right here, the Science 3, has a handful of tasks. Let's bring up the completed tasks just to have some more. And we also, one of them has grades, so there's some stuff in here. Now, it says it's 16. Let's see if we take off we just return the course query set by itself and comment all this stuff out. How's it going to behave? 16 versus 26. Okay, got a real example now. And let's look at it to see what is the actual behavior. And when you have an n+1 query behavior, this is the other nice part about the debug toolbar, which Ryan is probably quite familiar with at this point, is that you can see in the inspection of it, if you look for it, the pattern of where the stuff is repeating and where you're getting dinged for doing extra queries. And here it is right here. So the one that is getting us in this case is the graded work on the course. And you can see it has best friends. Awesome. There's a couple of indicators that this is a misbehaving case. One is what you can best call as like a cascade. You know, I mean, I can't really highlight that well, but like here's the area I'm talking about. So it kind of cascades or waterfalls in such a way that you can see that they're all related queries. So it's kind of a hint, hey, this might be happening in a loop because it's the same kind of query that's happening over and over again. The other thing that we've got that's a clear hint that that's happening is it says over here 10 similar queries. So when the debug toolbar is able to observe, hey, these ORM queries are like identical almost, except for small variants. In this case, the course task ID. It's a pretty clear sign that there's a problem. So those are the two kind of clear indicators if you're using the debug toolbar of this is why it's working this way. So that tells me that we can try and use autoprefetch on graded work and see how it goes. I want to put it on more too. There were more things on here, but I want to start with graded work because that would be a clear proof that that the package is doing what it says it's supposed to do. Okay, So what is the thing to import? It is called autoprefetch. Before I start that path, I'm going to add in autoprefetch to my MyPy. Otherwise, it's going to complain the first time I import it. If you're not using MyPy, this wouldn't matter, but for me it does, and my editor will yell at me. So I'm going to jump the gun on that and take advantage of my knowledge of the system. So we're adding that there, and you know, that's actually interesting. Let me return to that thought. I'm so used to stuff not being typed, but I'm curious, maybe has Adam typed this stuff? He's the kind of person that might, yeah. Oh, it's typed. So there's a hint here. So some libraries do have type annotations with them. And my knee-jerk reaction is to like go to a package and just say ignore it. But maybe I shouldn't do that. I should wait until it complains, because we are going to be working in this this code, and this stuff's already typed. So I don't actually think I need to do that. In fact, I might need to restart my editor. What's going on, editor? Get out, close. Okay, for it to take effect. So where do I need to actually be? Let's go to the course models, because we need to modify the course task. That was, I think, the first thing to do. And the course task has graded work was the name that was failing. Courses, graded work. Where do I have that? It's been a while since I've worked on this part of the modeling, so I apologize for not being able to jump straight to it. That was, let's see. Let's expand this. This is why I love the debug toolbar. There's a lot of information in case your brain forgets. They give you this trace back of where is this happening that's causing the query. And all of this stuff right here, if you've not looked at this before, I can tell you what it is. Render. Well, you can also see where it's coming from. So a lot of this is the actual query itself must be getting triggered in the template rendering logic in the template itself, which means that sorry, I'm not speaking very well. It's happening at this point in the template where it's looping over this stuff, which may not be the best thing. Maybe you want it to evaluate earlier, but it's okay. So it's checking on detailed task is graded is the property that it's checking. So we can look at is graded, and it's checking for an attribute of graded work. So there's a one-to-one field. So here it is. Here's the spot that we need to change. So let's start by looking at what it says to change. We need to, I believe, change the model itself to use autoprefetch. And so let's start with that. We'll change it to autoprefetch. I believe the reason that it said to do this is that when you're using the standard model, there's an associated manager object that gets created with this. And you can see that the migration that Django is going to create, they're actually using a different manager class by default. And that's how it's able to do its magic of knowing how to do this prefetch at the right time, by using this special manager. So we have to change the model, and then we also need to change the, wrong model, Matt. Autoprefetch. Sorry, y'all. And change the one-to-one field. So those two things. So we need to go up here and we need to import autoprefetch. Okay. So let's restart the debug toolbar. And we'll go over here and see if the 26 is changed to something different. No. What happened? I don't think the migration is a necessary part that's going to change anything about the application of Python. It's just a requirement. So let's run make migrations. And so that's migration 6. So, okay, here's something interesting. Sometimes Django needs to make a migration because of a code change. Like maybe you have a text choices and you're adding a new choice. It's going to create a migration because you're changing something about the model. But if you're concerned, like, is this going to actually do anything to the SQL? You can check that out. So we can say, this is the courses app. So we can run the SQL migrate command. We give it the app that we care about and the migration number that we care about. And what it's going to do is tell you if there's any actual change to the database. Now I'm using SQLite locally, which has to do this funny stuff of like recreating the table, which is bonkers. But I'm pretty sure if I ran this with Postgres, it would show that it's a no-op is what it looks like. And because I'm trying to see, is there any actual change here? I don't think so. It's like, let's take a look at the migration. Courses, migrations, and get number 6. So it's altering a model option. I'm pretty sure that's not an actual like database level thing. And the manager, that's also not a database level thing. And it's altering a field to change it to the autoprefetch class instead of the class that it had before, which was just a regular models one-to-one field. So none of those are actual like database level changes. I am confused though why it doesn't seem to be working. That's the problem. So let's go back to the documentation, make sure that we understand when we're going to get the benefits of this versus not. This is not a many-to-many relationship. That's not the case we're looking at. Yeah, I don't know. I don't get why it's not doing what we want. This could be, okay, maybe this is one where maybe Python didn't pick up that changing, because we're changing that now the class, and so it could be that gunicorn didn't pick up that. That doesn't seem right either, but I'll try. No. Well, what's going wrong? The other thing is we could like maybe liberally sprinkle autoprefetch in a bunch of places, but I kind of wanted to do it with like a precision to see a proof positive before and after that it's doing the right thing. And that's not doing the right thing. So this is why you should also test your stuff, because you might go on the promise of something will just automatically do everything, and then if you don't, code is code, so there's always a chance that things can go wrong. Or more likely that you have a misunderstanding, as in might be my case, that misunderstanding of when it's actually going to apply. So we're already in this. The graded work is a one-to-one field. And I was hoping that it would do a prefetch. I wonder if it's because of the has adder check. Maybe it can't figure that out. Has adder is like a, it might even be document. I'm sure it's documented somewhere. When you're working with Django one-to-one field, has adder is like a safe way to check if there is something there or not. But I wonder if that path bypasses some other kind of something that the manager might use and take advantage of. Well, maybe it's not a good example. We'll return. We'll find another place. So far, we're 0 for 2. That's okay. So where did I modify that code? Course views. Here we are. Let's see if there is perhaps another one of these that we could take out of the prefetch that will also exhibit not as good behavior, but that we can try to optimize. So if we come back to this, this should take us back down to, what was it, 16 or 13 or something? Okay, 16. What happens? Let's see, there's one resource. Let's add another one that we've got, or another couple. Bonus. And bonus 2. I don't know. I'm not being very clever with my names here. So now we've got 3 resources. Okay. So if we take out, if we modify this prefetch, is that going to bump up to 19 or 18? Went up to 17. Well, didn't think it would go to 17. Because we have 3 of them. Why would it go up to 17? I'm all sorts of confused tonight. Course resources. Well, this one doesn't look like it's actually going to do that. Shoot, man. All right. How about yeah, I think that's a good question. You would probably know this better than I do with your recent experience. Yeah, let's check it out. I don't know that my admin has that much extra stuff on it, but we'll check. So if I pick one of these courses, problem is I don't think that my admins are so boring that they're like, it's fetching the course and it's not actually fetching anything interesting here. I like the thought though. There's also, I want to say, I thought the admin had some basic automations to do some optimization. So there's like a, I believe if like the really the shotgun approach to this is to say, hey, go prefetch everything. So, and the way to do that is if you call select related and you don't give it any strings and just leave it empty, I believe it's going to go to every foreign key and just get them all. And I thought that that's what the admin did. If there were relations that showed up in some of the models. I'm trying to think if I have any places though that have like extra stuff. And my admins just are so boring. One of them does. School? Okay, the grade level admin has something. Let's try there. Oh, come on. Office. Schools. Grade levels. Check out the, what were we looking at? I think it was 3rd grade? 4th grade? Third grade. There it is. Okay. 15 queries. Thanks, Ryan. That was probably a good suggestion. That might be able to prove the point. So this query is for what? This is a getting the course. And so that is happening through something. There it is. Okay, there's a through model that gets the course. So the part that we have to reason about though is that where do we put the auto-prefetch? I guess that could go. Is it on the through model now? And here's where we run into trouble with this idea. Is I'm also using Django ordered model. Django ordered model is cool because it allows for ordering of your stuff, but then who wins, like in a prefetch versus not scenario? And I think one of the things that was noted here, many to many fields are not changed at all. But I don't know if that works with the through model. So I've got, there's enough funniness here that I'm not really sure if I want to put it on ordered model. And yeah, all right. We're gonna keep plugging away, looking for an example. We'll find one that makes sense in a minute, promise, or I hope. Let's try the dashboard view will get multiple grade levels. So we should, in theory, be able to delete this and see the before and after. Now, let's try this one. Surely we're bound to get one of these. Dashboard is this week page. So we've got 25 queries. It's not the best. There's some optimization stuff that I can't avoid for reasons, but the grade level part seems to be happening here. I think this is the prefetch. Yep. So when it's fetching the school year, it's also getting the grade level. We delete this for the moment. We should go up to 26. 26. Okay. Now we're getting this 3rd grade and 1st grade. So, all right, let's go now to the school model area, which should have the grade level class, which is going to have a foreign key to the school year. Okay. Auto-prefetch. Auto-prefetch. And then import auto-prefetch. Okay. Bring this out. Son of a gun. 26 queries. Why? We're like 0 for 3 now. Did the mighty Casey just strike out? What's going on? Here's the grade level query. Why are you not auto-prefetching? It's down in auto-prefetch now. This is not turning out to be the stream that I thought it would be. I thought we'd be like sailing and like, oh, look how cool this is. Auto-prefetch, it's amazing. And this is not a knock on the author. Adam's pretty great. So something is up with my particular app configuration or the way that I have written code, and it is just not working in the way I anticipated. Yeah, you're right. What was that? Max? 26 queries is not horrible by any stretch. And the app performance is fine. My real motivation for doing this is that I want to stop having to write prefetch related, because I spent the time in this scenario, and I'm just trying to envision all the time I'd have to spend in the future, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. Thanks for joining, by the way. It looks like you're a first-time viewer according to the chat, so I appreciate you tuning in. Okay, so what? It seems like I'm missing something. Maybe let's go back to the docs and see. Did I miss some part of the setup? Like, wasn't it just change the model stuff and you should be done? Oh, Vim, yeah. And I'm actually, so I'm using Vim, but I have recently like switched to NeoVim. I don't know if that makes me a heretic. I was pretty staunchly in the Vim camp for a long time, but I started doing some Lua stuff, and turns out NeoVim and Lua are a match made in heaven. Yeah, migration. I haven't, I'm just going to call you Max. I apologize if you actually Max Jowett. I don't know if that's your first and last name. I'm not sure. Doesn't matter. I've been pretty pleased with NeoVim, but I haven't gone all the way with it yet. I set up the language, the LSP. Okay, Telescope. Telescope, is that the fuzzy file finder? Because I use FZF for my fuzzy file finder, and I've been pretty happy with it. I don't know, if you've used FZF before, I'd be interested in your comparison between that and Telescope. FZF's been pretty good for me. Anyway, getting back to this code, it looks like, Ryan, maybe you looked at the documentation. I don't have any custom managers, so there's nothing to change there. Okay, you used FZF. So what would you say is why you picked Telescope over FZF? Is it just more native feeling, or is it actually faster, or what other advantages do you feel like it has, if you don't mind answering? Okay, so grade level, I changed the model. There's no custom manager. I changed the foreign key. And because there's no custom manager, the manager is going to inherit from the model. Oh, okay. Matches your color scheme. Yeah, you're right. That is one thing that the preview is definitely different from that. But I hooked my, so here's my actual like file, right? Let's look at a Python file. So I hooked my FZF. What did I do? This FZF plugin I think works with Bat. Yeah, that's what's called, Bat. And I've got my Bat theme set to the GitHub one, which I like. So yeah, it's a little different. I agree. It's not quite a match, but I've been pretty content with the preview. Anyway, well, to be honest, I'm sort of at a point where, like, I have struck out with this package so far. Let's look at what we tried to do. We tried to delete some stuff. It didn't really seem to work. We changed that over there. It didn't work. We tried it in the courses. It didn't work. We tried it at the admin. Didn't seem any way to find it there. I think I'm gonna pull the ejector seat. What is it? What's the phrase? Pull the ripcord. That's what I'm looking for. And just say we're not gonna do it. That seems like, I don't know. There's a lesson to be learned here, and I'll probably go ask Adam what I did wrong. But we got other things we can do. I had plenty. This was just like a spur of the moment. I thought I'd do this. But we can now like take a look at other things that were on my mind. So, I live in the States, not Japan, as Ashley pointed out. And last week was Thanksgiving in the States, right? So during that time, I was able to chat with my spouse, and she was able to give me the prioritized list of here's what she wants fixed. So I took that list, I put it in a GitHub milestone, and maybe we'll pick off one of these. So this should be top to bottom. We're definitely not going to get this one. This is actually probably 3 or 4 streams worth of stuff. Yeah, knowing when to fold is, I hate throwing work away sometimes, but there's definitely times where it's appropriate, where you're just not making the progress that you want, and so regaining the knowledge later, or coming back to it at a different time after you've had a chance to chat it out with other folks is sometimes what you need to do. So I think what we'll probably do with the rest of the stream this evening, we've already been going for an hour trying to make this work, surprisingly, is tackle one of these. And it kind of ties in with one of the things that I did recently. So it's, some of you have seen some of this content. We worked on a bulk delete page. And I'll bring it up so we can see it. We don't need the debug anymore. So let's turn on turbo. It goes faster if I don't have that on. So on a course, there's this ability to delete a bunch of tasks at once. We spent a bunch of time on this page. And my spouse was pretty happy with it for the most part. But she immediately said, like, I don't want to see the stuff that students have already done. So anything that's complete, I would like to be hidden by default. It's actually the behavior of the main course page, is the ones that are not done are the ones that appear, and if you want to like see the rest of the stuff, you have to click this button. And the way that works, hopefully y'all can see the URL bar, is it's a query string parameter that is completed tasks, that either is toggled with some basic template of an if statement, that when the if statement is this way, it says, show it. And so it reselects this page with the query string. And when it's inverted, it's got the opposite logic to take that query string off. So she'd like to see that same kind of behavior on the delete page, starting with the completed tasks hidden by default. Pretty reasonable request. Where this gets complicated is that multiple students can be part of a course. My front end stack is Django templates. This is all server-side rendered. So everything that you see is server-rendered stuff rather than whatever else, React or whatever. And where I do need more dynamic stuff, like I will use HTMX, which is pretty powerful and awesome. So let's take a look at doing this on this deleted page. And I need to remind myself, what was the definition of, no React in a React View world. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that. What is the guy's name? Oh, dang it. Okay. HTMX, I'll bring it up. I really like the project. I'm going to shamelessly plug it because I think it deserves more attention. This is the project that I use to do when I need to do dynamic things, which is not all the time. I reach for this. And what's great about it, from my point of view, is that it's kind of like the tailwind of JavaScript. I use Tailwind CSS, and so all of my CSS classes are put into my HTML. And with HTMX, it's a similar story. So you put it in as markup, and you can do some cool stuff with it. And what I was trying to point out is, oh, dude, I'm trying to blank on the guy's name. I feel bad because he's pretty funny. No. Is it Ben? That's not who I'm thinking of. Maybe Ben was the original author. Well, the maintainer of HTMX, who I can't seem to find on this, has a really amusing Twitter account where he really lightheartedly trolls on the big JavaScript frameworks. I'm not sure how to answer your question, Ryan. What do you mean by inline content security? That's a phrase I'm not familiar with. Happy to dig into it because I don't. Sounds like an interesting topic, but I don't really know. Anyway, do a search on. Let's do it right now. Doing it live. HTMX. Yeah, actually, okay, he's got his stuff here. So he just kind of like pokes fun at JavaScript, and I love JavaScript. It's a good tool. It makes the web a better place, but it does get sort of needlessly complicated sometimes, and so he just kind of pokes fun at that stuff. Not all the time. Like, he's not always a troll, but it's anyway. There's some good stuff on that account. Go check it out. Okay, so let's take a look at the course detail page to see how I did the completed task filtering. I don't actually remember what I had to do to get that working correctly. And then let's see if we can apply it to the bulk delete page and see if I need to refactor some stuff to get the appropriate query set. What this is going to look like is that if the query string is present, we're going to change the query set to show the tasks or not. That's about as deep as it needs to go. So course views, and this is the course detail view, and somewhere in here, show completed tasks. I'm using like extra stuff because the course detail view is used by multiple things. So this logic is replicated, unfortunately. Show completed. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, shoot. So, shoot. Let's talk about what it's doing. There's actually multiple layers to this. If we're in a world where there's no student enrolled for a course yet, or there's no student enrolled in a grade level, so there's no students possible to be in the course, then we want to show that as an incomplete task because there's nobody that could have done it. So when bool students is the case, then it's going to evaluate to false because it would be an empty list, right? There's no students. So it's going to start out assuming that it's a false thing, that it's not complete. And then later on, in the logic processing, it checks if there is, well, there's more things in here. Gosh, there's so much. This is way more complicated than I thought it was going to be. Good grief. Can't catch a break tonight. So there's another condition that actually sets it to false. What is setting it? Aha. Okay. The bool is also a possibility of if there are students, then it's going to set it to true because it'll be the students list will be truthy, and it's going to default to assume that that the task is done. But then it does a check later on. If there's no coursework associated with the particular task, then it marks it as false. That is a lot of logic in there, and maybe what we can do is update the bulk delete view to use the same function here. We provide a course tasks, enrollments, and this boolean. I think I can get all those things in this view that we need to change, and then let it do its thing. Might be the way to go. So let's compare to the bulk delete view, which is a course view, I think. We want to split this. The programmer. Yeah, you know, I had somebody, I'm drawing a blank on who it was, who encouraged me in a similar way as you're doing to use a dark theme. And I did it. And I did it for 3 or 4 months. Like I really, really tried to commit to it for you all. And it just didn't stick. No matter how much I tried, I just didn't like it. So, sorry. I use Flux. What I'm looking at basically right now is very amber colored. But I apologize. Okay. So, looking at this bulk delete page, it looks like it puts two things into the context. It puts the course and the tasks in the simplest version of this. And this little helper function, if we were to use it, takes the course, the tasks, the enrollments, which is a bit of data we'd have to fetch, but we can, and then that boolean of whether or not to show them. And then it spits it back out as task details, which is a more involved structure that includes the task, but includes more. So here's what I'm going to do. let's do this in a multi-step process of just trying to populate this function and see if we can add this extra context to the bulk delete page without modifying. I'm not going to change this. Max, I presume you're talking about programming languages, yes? The answer to that question is yes. Do I speak other spoken languages? Kind of. I've been learning Chinese and a little bit of Russian, so, but neither to any proficiency. My daily driver programming language is Python, but I don't know if y'all can see my tabs on Vim. I doubt it. I don't think I usually show that information, but I've got a handful of tabs that I just generally leave open. One of my other projects, and I think I mentioned I'm using NeoVim. It's one of my other projects. This is Lua code. I'm writing I'm basically writing a web framework ultimately, but currently right now I'm in the process of writing a template engine that will have the same syntax as Jinja is the goal, so Jinja 2, which is the common template engine for the Flask web framework, and it's used for many other tools like Ansible and other things. So it's very familiar to a lot of Python programmers, but I would have to modify some of the idioms to match up with Lua conventions. Like in Python, we're used to writing elif, right? In Lua, it's else if, I believe. I think it's the full thing spelled out. So smooth over the little differences there. So that's been my hobby project when I'm not doing this code. And then JavaScript, naturally, since I do a lot of web stuff, and I've professionally written in Perl, C#, Java, C++, C, Ruby, Erlang, Elixir. I've written a bunch of Rust. I didn't do much Go. A bunch of languages is what I dabble in, because I find it fun. Not to say that I'm an expert at all of those languages, just to be clear. But the professional stuff, I've done enough to like understand the language well. Okay, so what was I saying? So we're going to use this function, and we're going to come into this bulk delete page. And for step 1 is to modify the context to just see if we can get those task details in there. And from that, expand. And then once those are in there, presumably we can play with, like, do we have the right list of tasks or not? And then set the filtering, and then add the actual logic to the UI to make that work. So let's try that. So the function that we need to use is this get course tasks context, and we're going to update this existing context. So let's do context update of get course task context, and we need to pass in the course, the tasks. We don't have the enrollments yet, so I'm going to say an empty list for the moment. And show completed tasks, we want that to be false for the time being. And what did I mess up? Oh, there's an extra closing parentheses. Okay, let's just go poke at it. And now we need the debug toolbar back. Let's start that back up and look at the course task delete page. There's this one. And now in the context, if we inspect that, so if you're using Django and you're doing server-side rendering, you can always check what's in your context with the debug toolbar under this templates section. And this one's not easy to find, in my opinion. I wish it was a little clearer. It's hard because there are layers to it. But where I like to check is, you can notice see how all these say toggle context. You can see the context at different phases of this, what's been added and added and added. The most useful one is typically the last one here. Last in the series of execution, first in the list. That wasn't very clear. But here we go. Now we've got the task details are in there. And here's the task. Now, we didn't pass in all the right data, so it doesn't have the notion of enrollments yet, so it's going to probably show all of them that are actually available. Because remember, in that case where there were no students, it's just going to say that the complete is false by default. So it's not going to skip anything. And we said show completed tasks. What did we do? No. Didn't filter those out. Show completed tasks. We set to false. Oh, so since they're all false, even though we said show completed tasks was not the case, it doesn't really matter. I'm really getting tongue-tied, but it's a full list. Nothing is done according to this because we didn't pass in any students yet. So we need to do that for the course, and which means we need to be able to populate enrollments appropriately. And so I want to find out where this is used and get the matching enrollments, kind of mirror that. Bugger. Just kind of keeps going. Okay. Now, if I was a better developer, I might refactor all of this to be some other helper function. I don't know that I care. I'm just going to, for the moment, steal it all. At this stage, I'm just trying to make it work. Like, I think that's a pretty decent skill to have, is to like know when to actually try and refine and dry out your code and do all of that. And there are times where you're just trying to gain the understanding of, is this going to work? And yeah, I think that's valuable. So there's some stuff we can now take out enrollments, and actually we can, by doing all of this, stealing all of this stuff, we actually get pretty close to what we need. We need the task, or do we? We already have the course, so I don't think we need to do that way. So I think, okay, I'll make it clear that like this is different for a moment. We've got this extra chunk of code, and we might be pretty close into getting what we actually want. So let's go over here. Now that we've got enrollments, so some of these would be true, but since we are like not showing completed tasks, this list I think is just going to get smaller. Okay, so right now it's 1, 2, well, they're numbered, so in sequence. So number 10 is the last one. So there are 10 of these. I speculate if I refresh this, anything that's on this page, we can't see which ones are completed or not. I'm pretty sure less than 7, for example, is a completed one, would disappear from that task detail context. So, oops, not this equal. We go back and look at the context again. Now we have some student information here, which didn't have before. And the numbers are different now, curiously. I don't remember what number stood for. But there are fewer of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's working. And we should be able to go up here and add in the query string parameter, which again is named completed tasks. So if we just say completed tasks equal 1, so even though we don't have the UI, we can still modify the interface through the URL and see if it's behaving the way we want. So here's the extra ones, ordered in sequence, as we'd expect, and it looks good. So the thing to do now is to modify the rendering of what's actually going to display. Instead of going over the tasks as was inserted into the context, now we need to loop over these task details and pull out the relevant bits. It's a little bit hairier in terms of the information that's in there, but the task isn't that far away. Like, here it is right here. So the looping shouldn't be terribly, terribly difficult. So let's do that. And we'll finish this off with the appropriate tests. Like, I imagine that I'll probably be breaking some tests in the context that's expected. Maybe there's some cleanup that we should do. Like I said, that's used in multiple places. I don't know that we need to. I don't know how much it's going to matter. Like, this is the number of times that this has happened. Well, maybe it's the third time now. Let's see. 687. Yeah, it's probably the third time. Shoot. There's a rough rule that you can use as a heuristic. That is, I think, useful to remember. I like to, and I did not coin this myself. I don't know where it comes from, but I've heard it used before. And it's once, twice refactor. If you're working on some chunk of code and you get to the second time you're doing something, there's a temptation at that point, when it's the second time, to say, I know what this is duplication, I've been taught, don't repeat yourself. And that might be the moment at which you think you found the general pattern. But avoid that temptation. Do it the second time. Code it the second time. And the reason is we're really bad at really understanding the long-term ramifications of our code. So if you don't refactor it twice, then you have an opportunity to learn. But here we're at the third time. And here's the scenario where it's the same information that I'm trying to supply. So maybe I should think about, is it time to refactor this into something that's common? Is there something here? So I don't actually know the answer yet, but now that I have 3 data points to go from, I can actually think about, is this worth trying to do something? Like, is there a concept that I'm missing here? I'm not convinced that there is, but it's still something to consider. And now that we're at the third time, we'll do that. But I do want to get this cleaned up first, get the feature working, and then have the test passing too. Like, I don't actually know if my tests are going to be passing right now. We also should include a second test that we haven't included of showing completed tasks versus not completed tasks. So there's some testing there. And so there's still a lot to do in order to actually make this right. But proving to ourselves that we can get it is a big part of it. Okay. So let's leave this at task detail. Let's go to the actual template, update it to work properly with that new data structure, and then come back and get the little fragment of control code that shows show or hide tasks. I think that's a useful thing to get as well, to like polish off the UI there. So what is this page? This is the template course delete, bulk delete. course task bulk delete. Yeah, I think this is the one. Delete course tasks. Yep, here it is, because we got the big angry warning. We've got a loop. Now you can see how simplistic this page was. There's really not a lot to it, which I love. I love a good, clean template. Can I get the entire thing in here? Hey, look at that. I think that, yeah, entire template file in one screen. That's amazing. So what we need to change, and the simplest way to do this, no, we got to do a little bit more. So where we have course task, we're going to change it to task detail dot task, because the task has been embedded into this larger structure that's holding more information. And that's all that's changing there. And now the thing that we need to iterate over is the set of task details. So we'll call that thing task detail, and this is task details. Okay. So we're essentially switching from using this thing, the query set, to using task details. The output should be the same. Well, actually, in this case, nope, we still have completed tasks. So it's going to show all of them. Virgin Boy TV, I am showing a SaaS that is for a homeschool. So I homeschool, my family, my spouse homeschools my kids. I've got 2 kids. And I built this app for her to have a schedule generated automatically from all of the course for everything that she needs for the day, knowing like what's on the list of stuff to do. So that's what we're currently working on. And thank you for joining in. Looks like you're a first time chatter, so appreciate you tuning in. Let's refresh the page and see how we're doing. Exactly the same content, proper order, same number of queries, but now we're rendered off of task details. So I am I am making commercial SaaS, and I do have multiple. This isn't just for my spouse. I left out some details. So I do have some other customers that are also homeschoolers, and yeah, this is like a side project for me. I have a full daytime job. I'm not really looking to like make this my long-term business, or it's more of like a teach people like yourself, and make a little money on the side, or at least break even. I'm now at about the break even point with my expenses, which I've shown in the past. So not really looking to sell, but thanks for the offer. Okay, so let's try changing the URL, taking out the completed tasks, and see if it's doing that filtering properly. Hey, cool. It is. So we now have the list is smaller. What we're not doing, and I can imagine this already, is when you have the completed tasks, the completed tasks were visible, but we're showing them visibly the same way. Like there was no distinction. Whereas if you recall from what I showed from the actual course, the look of a completed task versus an incomplete task was, one was grayed out, one wasn't. So here's the difference. So we're going to have to replicate that aspect too. And that shouldn't be that hard. It'll be changing the color with some of that task detail information. There's a complete Boolean that was in there that we could use, that we'll take advantage of. We'll leave that up as we'll inspect this in a little bit. So let's first bring in this chunk of UI right here, the hide completed tasks part. So I don't remember what template that's in exactly. So let's search for hide completed. And I've got it 2 places. Why is it on the top and the bottom? it is. Wow. Okay. I probably did that for a reason. And what would be the reason? Maybe if it was a really long list of tasks, there's like I want to do this immediately, and I want to be able to get it to the bottom, and also do that if I'm at the bottom. All right, I'll replicate it in both spots. This just keeps getting more fun. There's like logic around this thing about whether to show it too. So it's only showing this bit of UI when there are enrolled students and when there are course tasks. I don't mind reusing this, but it means that I have to add that extra bit of context to the delete page. We have that bit of context in the view. Yeah, and this is the same way. Is it the same spacing too? That's different spacing. Son of a gun. Ooh, okay. So notice that this one is MB2 and this one at the bottom is MT4. Can't make it easy on myself, can I? So let's think about if I was going to make this a little reusable chunk of template fragment, what would I need to do? There are three things. Step 1. I need to make sure that the view Yeah. Using request. This is a good little trick. It's a good observation there. Request is available to my template rendering context because of. Actually, I think I can even show you all exactly why that is. In the template section, here we are. You have in the options section. This is from a generic start project call to Django. So when I created my app, I used the start project command. So this is the settings file that came out of that. And it generated this templates section. I modified this DIRS part, but I left most of this alone. And you can see there's this context processors. And context processors are things that are added or that will modify the context of the template. And the one that is inserting the request object is this one right here. So this comes with a default list, and it basically means that the request object is available to your template. And it's the same request object that goes to your view. So you can access the get parameters, as you can see done here. And the get parameters is a query dict. So it behaves like a dictionary. And so you can access and get arguments, get parameters, directly in your template, which is what I'm doing. Okay, so what are the three things that I would need to do if I needed to reuse this little chunk of fragment in now the 4 spots that are required? At the top of this one, at the bottom of this, and then on the same thing on the delete page. The first thing that we'd have to satisfy is the actual data contract. So enrolled students and course tasks needs to be part of the context of each of the views. Okay, that's not too hard because the actual file that we were working on, the bulk update, I had a different name for it. No, I didn't. I even called it course tasks. So we've got the enrolled students, or we could get them. We could get it from enrollments, I guess we could just say. What did I do? Enrolled students. Okay, well, we can easily populate enrolled students, and we can also easily populate course tasks. In fact, we already have. So add that. And then the other thing we need to be able to do is right now the hide detail page, it's very important that it be able to reference the URL that it's currently on. On the detail page, it needs to go back to the detail page. On the bulk delete page, it needs to go to the bulk delete page, right? So we have to make the URL something that we can inject into the include template, and that's totally doable as well. Finally, we need to be able to include any extra CSS classes that we want. So like we want to, since the difference between the top and the bottom was this margin buffer that was being added, here we could totally do that and make a little chunk of template that we can put in there. So I think that's worth doing because this is a bit of detail that I want this to be consistent, and I think it's worth it. So let's try that. Let's first start with a detail view because that one already has the context set up properly. So let's get the include working over there and so we can see it, and then we will bring it over to the bulk delete side of the equation. And let's search for the other hide. Start from the top. Yeah, why not? Let's close this, and I'm going to yank all of that stuff. This will be, what will we call this? Toggle completed tasks. That's going to be the name of the include. We'll paste it in here. We've got the chunk. And we don't need to mess with the actual variables. We'll just assume that, I'm going to assume that I'm going to pass them in correctly if I ever want to use them, because it's very inspectable of what's needed in enrolled students and course tasks. And the thing that I said we needed is we need to have this little MT4 do something different. So I'm going to change that, and we're going to insert what should we call it? CSS. Let's just call it CSS classes. It's going to be a string. So we've got it like that. So that's we can pass that in, and you'll see what this looks like in a moment. And this will become URL. Whoops. I wish my editor would stop outdenting that stuff. Okay. So now you see we have like these two arguments in this fragment. And to use this, we have to be a little bit clever with this because the URL is not going to be as easy to pass in, but we can still do it. So let's return to the other template, the course detail one. And here we're at the top. So now we want to change this to be an include, and we want to say courses, and it's, what did I name it? Toggle completed tasks. And for the moment, I'm going to leave them, I'm going to put in 2 of them intentionally. And we'll pass in CSS classes, right? Yep. Is equal to MT4. And then for the time being, we'll just say URL is equal to foo. Okay, just giving you a flavor of like what is this we're trying to do. So if we come back to the detail page and refresh this, we should now see 2 of these, ideally. Whoops. Oh, I screwed it up. What'd I do? Unknown argument for include tag. Okay. Oh, you know what I did? You need to have there's a keyword on there you have to put in with, I believe. Hey. Except well, why is it not showing anything? That's not cool. Where'd you go? Oh, it's at the bottom. I did the I guess I'm doing the bottom one first. Okay. Okay, and let's check it out. So how do they compare? As I'm hovering over this, you can look in the bottom right corner or bottom left corner, sorry, and you can see it's going to foo, and you can see this one is actually going to the detail page that we want it to. If I click this, whoops, that's the wrong one to click. If I click the one that will actually take me to the one that hides the stuff, it is showing the same with the complete or not. So I think it's doing the right thing. Now, the other bit that we need to do, though, is we need to pass it in, pass in the URL. And how would we do that if, like in normal usage, URL is a template tag? You can see it here. So I believe that the way this can be done is URL can be used with the with keyword. We might need to look this up. I don't remember the exact syntax, but the effect is we're going to say something like with URL as. Actually, let's just try it. Let's see if I can get it from memory. I'm not confident that it'll work properly. Not confident at all, but we'll try. Course detail, course ID as URL, and then it's going to be an end with, and then we would change URL to be URL. It's kind of a way of like, it's something you don't want to do a lot of. It's basically assigning a local variable inside of your template. And I don't typically recommend it, but what we're sort of doing is dynamic here. And the only other option would be to add the URL to the context, which is not a bad choice either. I'm trying to think. There's probably another way to do this. We'll try this first, though. No, that's not right. Okay. Django template URL as. Template as. Let's go to URL first. They might have it in that documentation. There it is, right there. Oh, you can just like assign it locally without with. Huh. Okay, cool. Well, it's easier than I thought. So we can drop the with and do this, supposedly. Neat. And that's what we want. But look, it's different, behaving differently. Ah, I know what I did. I screwed up the include. I deleted the part that we care about. So check it out. The real block, the if side has no query string. The else has a query string. So we inadvertently, y'all, I'm not going to blame y'all. I messed this up and dropped the query string. That's why we test stuff out. Okay. Now they're the same. Okay. But there's another way to do this that doesn't require using URL. We can, I think we can get this directly from the request. And it is, shoot, what is it? Request dot something in the templates directory. I've used it before. Path. Request path. So I think, let's try that. So instead of using URL here and assigning it, because this path right here, this course detail course ID is exactly the same path that we're already on. Is that true? there might be, okay, we'll play with it. I'm going to leave this up here alone, and we'll change it to request path. There might be some shenanigans that are unanticipated that I'm thinking about now. We'll see. Okay, so we're up at the version that doesn't have any query string in it. So this is going to behave the way I think it would, the way I think it should. Now, what happens though? Is the query string going to be part of request path? I don't. Maybe not. Let's just click find out. So now it's with hidden, and oh, good, it works as expected. So the query string is not with request path, so this is a safe thing to do. So this makes this chunk of template fragment not care. It's only going to apply to the page it's on, which I think is a reasonable constraint because it simplifies what we have to pass into it. So now we're really only, all that we're truly providing to the code here is a bit of stylistic hint that we want for the top versus the bottom. So I think what we're in a position to do is we can delete this version. So now we've got a template fragment, and then we can take this up to the top, and this one is instead of the MT4, this is MB2, which is margin bottom 2. So it's a small bump to the bottom margin. So let's change that to MB2. Now if we refresh the page, there should be one at the top and one at the bottom. We deleted the extra one there. We've got 2 up here. And they are what I would expect. It's all good. Okay, cool. We've cleaned up the course detail template, and we're ready to apply it to the bulk detail page. I'm going to do the same. I'm actually going to steal the same stuff and put it on the other one. So let's copy that. Let's go to the bulk, and here we're going to do, where should I put it? I guess it needs to go, yeah, where should I put it? There's one that could obviously go on the bottom. There's the note here. Put it between the note and the form. Let's try it. The other thing that's missing still, remember though, is that we haven't included the context yet. So I believe actually it won't even appear because the context says only show it if you have enrolled students and course tasks. But the context isn't going to have enrolled students, so it shouldn't appear at all, really. It's not there, so it's not a surprise. What I think we can do now, though, is we can go to the view and say context. Again, I'm going to clean some of this up. So if this looks a little funky, don't fret. It's equal to, let's do a list comprehension of enrollment student for enrollment in enrollments. Now normally this would be something that would cause too many queries, but we already did a select related on the student, so it's not going to do any extra queries here. It's a very safe thing to do. We refresh this, we're going to get the button. It's showing this, and now we can, if we look at the bottom left, we can see that it's doing linking to this page with the query string. We can click it, and it's showing that, and we can click it, and it's hiding that. Great. I'm also at this time observing that there is a margin here that I didn't realize was there. which is sort of making that button look weird to me now. Got a padding around the whole side. Maybe we need to tweak that. Okay. So we've got the right context in there. Oh, Johnson, I guess Fred. Oh, welcome. Yeah, I'm happy to show off like working on the app. It's fun stuff to build, and hopefully folks learn something, even though I stumble through much. But I think that's part of the journey, right? It's like we all make mistakes, and I am no stranger to mistakes. As I think you pointed out last time when I was being totally daft and not realizing that I was on the wrong calendar month. I will get back to the podcast. Part of being down here is so that I eventually have a reasonable studio setup where I can just kind of jack in and actually record easily. That's my podcast recordings are usually on the weekend, which is really hard in the fall because both my kids are doing sports and stuff. So there's just not a lot of time for that. But then also there's just the inertia of like, am I really going to set up on a Saturday morning to do a podcast, to record it, and then edit it? And so I need to bring down like the barriers that I have in my head. So anyway, but I appreciate the kind words. So we've got now the UI on both sides. That brings the parity there. And then let's adjust this padding so that the left padding is 0. So where is it? The padding 2. Let's drop it down. I think it's just here where we want to drop it down. PL0. I think it should be fine. Come on, Django. Let's go. Oh, didn't get it on the header. Close. Yeah, I think, it's funny. I time them. I time how long it takes to produce one. Because I use a Pomodoro. Kind of while I'm recording. So usually during a recording, it's like 2 Pomodoros worth, so it's like 50 minutes on average, which makes sense. It's about the length of the podcast, but what you don't see is all the times I screw up while I'm actually speaking, and then I edit those out later. That's just one continuous recording session. And then it's about 4 to 6 Pomodoros after that of actually editing and processing, getting everything ready. So it's probably 4 or 5 hours worth of work to make in a single episode. And it's only that easy to produce because I'm basically using my Understand Django article series as the content. So I've already got the show notes done practically. I really repurpose my my article as the show notes and stuff. But you're right, it's a bunch of work. All right, what do y'all think? That looks something about that looks a little busy to me. Maybe I could give. I'm feeling like this is a little crowded. So I might want to make this breathe more. Like this gap here seems appropriate, and I want to be able to just because this page is simpler than the other page. So on the other page, there's already more spacing that's going on. Whoops, did I fix that? Yeah. There's already more spacing that's going on, so it doesn't feel like it's crowding. But on this one, it's a little it's a little tighter here. I want to give this a little bit more space. Let's do MB. Oh, I don't know. MB6 maybe, and then MT4. Kind of add 4 to either side of that. Let's see how that looks. Well, that added the bottom, but it didn't get up enough on the top. Maybe that was a little too much. Now we're getting into the really subjective. It's feeling a little goofy to me. So let's bump it down to 4 and 6. See how that goes. Yeah, that's feeling a little bit better. And then at the bottom, there's this chunk of space is about equal to that chunk of space. I don't know, maybe that one's okay. All right. Like I don't know if any of you are painters or something, but I think there's this idea in painting that like you can, or there's certainly, I spent a long time drawing, like with pen and ink. And maybe that's it, Ryan. I should try that. And there's something called over-rendering, where you just work something over too much, and then it looks junky because you could clear it, like it seems like it's been worked over too much. And I don't want to do that. Don't want to futz with it too much. The other part, like Ryan, you mentioned making it lighter. The only fear I have on that though is that there's then like it doesn't jive with the other lightness over here. It's like the plus and minus of Tailwind. Like it's infinitely customizable, but it's infinitely customizable. So every page could look totally different if I'm not careful. I think I might just leave it. Hands off, walk away. It's okay for now. And if my wife says that looks horrible, Matt, then I can come in here and rethink something. My guess is she's going to say, "Why is it twice?" She'll probably only care about this one. Yeah, maybe that's the thing to change. Let's think through this. So functionally, the views are different. This page, it's reasonable that you might want to immediately see the completed tasks, right? And so you've got it at the top to be like, okay, here's something I can do. I want to see them. And then if you get to the bottom, you're like, oh yeah, there's completed tasks. There's another signal. Do you want to see them? On a task delete page, you're really at that task. The natural inclination in my mind is you want to delete some tasks that aren't done that you don't care about. And it's only like if your student happened to do them, you're like, oh, right, it's a completed task, so I should go check that. So that's making me feel like maybe the better thing to do is leave this at the bottom here and delete this top one altogether. How's that going to look? That way the note still has plenty of focus. There's one kind of call to action for if you want to do something else. Yeah, this is feeling right to me. If you're like, oh, right, it's a completed task. Got it. Okay, I like that. It's funny how a single line can really like make a user interface aesthetically pleasing or not. Again, all subjective, but it's my taste here. So, okay, what else is there? We've been going for 2 hours, so I'm probably not going to push this any further. We've got this change that needs to be cleaned up. Some of this context is still needed. Like we still need to display course, so course is still required. Tasks, course tasks was the thing that indicated whether to show this or not. Enrolled students is new, and the task detail stuff is new, and that's all fine. So I'm going to clean up probably how this is done. And I still need to do a test. I need a test that actually shows that we're handling this extra get query string parameter. Need is a strong word probably, but I would like a test to kind of indicate that this is part of the data contract for this URL and this view. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to stop before we get to the test. So let me clean up a little bit here, and then we'll wrap. And I can write the test another time. It's going to be, they're going to be fairly mundane tests. And I can probably point people to what they come out as during the week. I imagine that's something I'll write later this week. So not a lot of actual template changes here. There's that refactoring that simplified the templates themselves to use these includes with the CSS class stuff. And there's this. So let's go over to that view. And what do I want that to look like? Bulk delete. Don't want it to look like update of the context. So what was weird about this, what I don't like right now, is I'm creating the context first, and then I'm updating it with more, and then I'm updating it with still more after that. Why would you, that's a good question. Why would you delete a completed task at all? I think it's unlikely, because the app will cascade, and it'll do a cascade deletion. So if you delete the task and there is work there, you're effectively deleting the record that your student did the work. So that's a good question. Why would I delete it at all? And the answer is I don't really know, but I didn't want to say, sorry, you can't bulk delete a task that your student did. I wanted to give the optionality. Maybe it's not really a valid use case, and most, 99.99% of the time, no one will ever use it. But trying to just make it possible for that future, that 1% of the time, or 0.01% of the time. I don't soft delete. I take a pretty hard stance on not trying to keep a bunch of data around. Here's the way I view this. This is data about kids, and if you look at the model, and the code's available. You've looked at it, Ryan. I worked at a education startup that taught kids how to do better writing, and so that means that I had exposure to the COPPA. I think it's COPPA, COPPA. It's the laws in the United States that help try and protect children online. And what I've learned from that experience being in ed tech is I want to collect as little as possible about kids. The fact that it's already associated with grade levels, you could already kind of deduce how old a kid is, and I don't think my app is a likely target for would-be hackers, and I don't think that I'm writing very vulnerable stuff either. But at the same time, I want to try and minimize data that's out there. So that is my stance on that. And what that means in practice, though, is that I want a delete to mean a delete, that it's actually gone from the database, and nobody could get access to it in the future. Maybe I'll change my tune on that later when customers say where's my data, and I'm just gone. Sorry, it's gone. But for the time being, it feels like the right call to me. All right, let's move the context down here. That's step one. We still need the grade levels there. That's cool. We're still doing the enrollment in an appropriate way. I don't want to touch that. So this is the bits of data, and then we need to, I think what I want to do is put the enrolled students up here. Yeah. So let's do enrolled students. And we can do the same. Wow, hold on. Let me just take it from here. Delete that. Oops. Okay. Delete this line. All right. That feels better. So now we're doing an update. We're creating the context in one place and adding all the primary keys in there in one go. And then this is probably the way I did it. Yeah, I did an update on this one too. Yeah, these ones are gnarly on how I built the context there. So I think that was the right choice. It's kind of it's a 1-2 punch of create the main context, update the main context, go. That feels good. All right. What's the strategy for the test I'm going to write? I'm going to write probably, well, I have a feeling my test might even be broken right now. Did I only make additions? Let's find out. So I need to test the new stuff. And I need to test that my URL, I want to test that we saw here today when we were clicking on it and the query string parameter was there, that the list of tasks varied. And that's good. That's the behavior that we want. And I need my test to prove that that will remain true indefinitely going forward. And so that's what I'm going to be testing. I'm going to add a test that has a task in a completed state, and then I'll have another test that has a couple of tasks, that one incomplete and one completed, with the show completed tasks, and then prove that there are 2 tasks in there. And having that level of coverage, kind of checking both sides of that Boolean condition, are the things that I will make me feel good about the coverage of this view. Writing those tests, again, we've already gone on pretty long, so I think that'll be enough. But that's the plan, and that'll finish off that issue. Maybe next time, I will have some kind of feedback from Adam. I'll probably poke him on Twitter and be like, "Hey, man, what gives? Why didn't any idea why this might not have worked?" He might not have any good answers, and I might just leave auto-prefetch alone. I'm clearly doing okay without it. It would be something that would be nice to incorporate, but if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And who knows? Maybe I found a bug in the behavior with the has-adder stuff that is worth it, that I could get that in and get it fixed, and then have something to actually show for that first hour of outing. Next time, we might, let's see. I'm trying to think if we should work on a couple more of these smaller issues, clearly like this one marked important, or get into, this is a bigger feature. If you recall from a few streams ago, we were modifying school breaks so that they would work per student. And that was actually a precondition to this concept of field trips that my spouse has requested. I need to get a clear design from her on what she wants in field trips, and then maybe we could work through that. I mean, really, truly, this is not a small thing. This is marked as one issue. It's probably a whole epic, a whole, there's my Jira knowledge, Jira language coming through. It's a whole milestone in and of itself. So we could probably break that down and start working on that. So that's probably the plan for upcoming streams as we continue to plug away on this app. Thank you all for joining in. I do take this content and I post it up on YouTube. If you are not already, what's the right word on Twitch? Is it follow, like, a subscriber? I can't remember. If you want to continue seeing more on Twitch here, follow me. And if you catch this on YouTube later and want to leave a comment, ask more questions, like, whatever, subscribe over on YouTube, I'd be welcome for that too. Appreciate you tuning in, appreciate the good questions, and I hope you have a great evening. Take care.